Hi, welcome to, it's not called Carb anymore, isn't it?
No, it's Friends of Rosey
Friends
Podcast.
of Rosey Podcast. Yep. Cath's here.
And Alex.
And I've got a hair in my coffee, but it's my own hair, so I feel like that's acceptable. We haven't done one of these in a little while. It's been a bit hectic, so we've read some really good books. Alex is a fan of horror books. I'm a giant wuss, and I never really have read horror. The closest I would have been like, I don't know, The Green Mile by Stephen King, which isn't really horror. It's just a bit spooky, you know.
Yeah.
I did read heaps of Goosebumps as a kid.
There you go.
And
That's horror.
Yeah, I still think about it. The one with the dummy called Slappy. Oh, and this photograph, Say Cheese and Die.
Say Cheese and Die is a classic. Yeah.
And then I went into Christopher Pike, who was like Goosebumps for older kids. So I don't know how at what age I turned into a wuss, but. Anyway, so we it was sort of Halloweenish.
This is kind of a belated Halloween edition of the podcast.
It went into November too.
Yeah. And now it's the 7th of December, so...
But it's good. It's
fine, yeah.
So we started with Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. This one's really interesting because I did a thing on social media saying, hey, who's read it? And heaps of people have read it. And generally the answer is, yes, I read it. It was, all the rage when I was in high school, or my older sister read it, or my young, like everyone knows someone who's read it. And often it was a female going, oh, my sisters all read it, but I didn't read it. And it's pretty weird.
It's very weird. I knew a little about it, but not much.
Yeah.
And kind of, if you go into it just thinking it's a horror classic, I think you're going to be very confused.
Yeah.
Which I kind of was. But it is, it's very gothic, but it's mostly about the relationship between all the members of this family. Like, it's kind of a domestic thriller almost.
Well, and so for those who don't know, and I feel like a lot of people do know this, I didn't know it, you told me about it, but basically loving... I'm just going to
spoil it?
Or? No. Loving family, they all love each other, father dies, mother takes them to her parents' house who disowned her for marrying their father, and locks the kids away saying, hey, you guys should stay here until my father knows, we know my father will accept you, I'll get his inheritance and we'll all be fine.
Or until he dies.
Yeah, true, because he's sick and he's going to die soon. So they're locked in this room temporarily, and that's sort of the premise. And her mother's awful and treats them really badly and thinks they're like sinners. There's sort of all this religious kind of stuff. That's sort of, it's hard to say much more without of the spoiler.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, it wasn't the best written book in the world, but especially towards the end, I had no idea what was going to happen. And it was a real page turner. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, especially the last, 3 chapters? Like, I genuinely was like, shit, it was gripped. Enough that I don't know if I would read the last, so it's a series of 3?
It's a series that is much longer than that, I think.
But V.C. Andrews wrote them, and then she died, and they hired a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I think you told me that, so I'm just acting smart with your knowledge. But yeah, it kind of made me want to know what kind of happens. Probably not enough to read them, but maybe enough to read a synopsis.
Yeah, I think for now I'm content to leave it at just that one. But I definitely understand why it was a book that was kind of passed around by teenage girls in the... What was it, like the 80s? Or when was it published?
Maybe late 70s. But yeah, definitely around that time. But because it talks a lot about, it's from the point of view of the young girl. What's her name, the young girl? Gosh, I can't even remember.
79. I'm Kathy.
Kathy.
You should remember that.
Yeah. No, not Kathy. Everyone calls me Kathy. No offense, Kathy Dobby, who is a friend of Rosie. We love you. But Kathy doesn't suit me. But yeah, Kathy... and she sort of is talking about her body, and she's, starting to go through puberty. And, of course, she's got no one to talk to about it because they're locked in this room. And then her older brother's there. He's going through puberty. So there is a lot of, like...
It kind of covers a lot of taboo subjects, even beyond the big taboo one that I won't mention in case it's a spoiler for anyone. But
I feel like it's quite well known that that's...
I think so.
Yeah, because you went into the book, and it is... look, it's incesty, is what...
Yeah, but
people know about it.
We won't tell you between who.
Yeah,
because...
bum.
But even apart from the incest, I feel like talking about her body and her urges and her desires so openly was kind of...
Or even getting periods and stuff. She was freaking out. Like, she had no one to guide her, poor thing.
Yeah. I think that would have been, like, comforting and or exciting for a girl reading it at that time who was going through similar things and, could kind of relate to the horror of your own body changing.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And it was interesting that, like, under the cloud and of this, you know, horrific grandma who was just this super religious zealot, like, you know, she... You know, I won't look at you and I don't know what there's some of the rules she put in place.
Not to look at the opposite sex.
Not to even look at the opposite sex. Don't go into the bathroom. And they were the twins. They're really young. She was like, there were a boy and a girl. They can't go into the bathroom together. They can't have baths together. And they were like, 6 or something to start with. You know, like, you know, but she was like, you know, everyone's going to get up to mischief and this and that. And I don't know. I'm very aware I said incesty and, you know, maybe that got the idea in their heads. There'd be an argument there, I think, by some people who read it. But I don't know. I think it's worth reading. It definitely is one that, I can see why it's still popular and why it was so popular at the time. How did you feel about it?
Pretty much the same. Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile read, but it's not... It wasn't what I guess I didn't really go into it with many expectations, but it wasn't what I expected it to be, given that I kind of see it talked about in horror spaces a lot. And it's really, there's a lot of things in it that happen that are pretty horrifying. Yeah. But it's not really about that.
No. Yeah. The treatment of the kids is horrific, but it's not... I don't know if it's scary. I don't know. I didn't feel scared at any point. Like, I was worried for the kids and there was a lot of awful things, but it wasn't...
written horror isn't really like that. Like, you don't read a book and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Like,
really?
Yeah, that's not really the point of it.
You love It by Stephen King. Surely you're like, oh, a clown in the sewer. Like, you're not ever afraid?
It's pretty exceptional to read a book and be like, oh, I'm afraid. Like, that's not really what horror is about.
I've heard you tell me the description of a book and I've felt afraid. Maybe I'm just a wuss.
I think you're just a wuss.
I don't know, like, because you put yourself in the shoes of the people and go...
But so much of horror is suspense, is fear, is... Well, obviously, but it's like, it's not knowing what could happen. And it's the unknown, it's the fear of the unknown. Definitely. And so if you're reading a book, it is all being revealed to you up until that point. Do you know what I mean? The words are on the page. Like, it's not like... I don't know, it's difficult. A work of horror fiction is never going to evoke the same feelings as a horror movie, but that's not the point of written horror, to me, anyway.
Yeah. Well, look, you know a lot more about it than I would, but I don't know, I think, the unknown is the big part for me, and I think, you know, and we can talk, well, actually, maybe that's a good segue to the next book we read, actually. Do you want to introduce it? Shirley Jackson?
So after we wed?
Oh, did we wed? That's nice.
After we read Flowers in the Attic, then we moved on to The Haunting of Hill House. I think we read things in between, like it wasn't all consecutive. No. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which is another horror classic.
And previously we'd both read We've Always Lived in the Castle by her, which I loved. I thought it was brilliant.
Yes, we both really enjoyed. I don't know if I loved it at the time. I think I really enjoyed it.
The Haunting of Hill House, or We've Always Lived in the Castle?
we have always lived in the castle, really? Yeah.
I was gripped immediately. And I remember thinking I couldn't tell you what it is that's gripping me, but I'm so gripped. And I really tried to articulate it.
In hindsight, I think it's brilliant. At the time, I was like, oh, I really enjoy this, but I kind of don't really get all the fuss. It's kind of like...
the more you think about it.
Well, it's like when I read The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, after having read like Earthsea and The Dispossessed.
It doesn't hold up,
I was like,
I felt
this
the same.
is kind of mid in a lot of ways, and especially for like really transgressive feminist sci-fi. And then I went and read like The Female Man by Joanna Russ and like other works of feminist sci-fi that were coming out at the time, and I was like, oh, she was light years ahead. Like, she was so far ahead.
Really
and The Left Hand of Darkness is brilliant, and even if I didn't sort of feel swept up in it, like I can totally see its literary merit now, which is kind of how I feel about We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But The Haunting of Hill House, oh my god, did not like this at all.
Well, I think I liked it more than you did, but again, that's, I think, because I felt scared when I read this book. I was afraid.
That's crazy.
Not for myself, but I was like, I felt nervous as I was reading it. Do you want to talk about the premise, or I can if you want?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, so it's from point of view of a few people, but mostly one person. But basically this guy, he's a professor or researcher anyway, and basically he researches, he calls himself an anthropologist or something, but he researches the paranormal, and he wants to go to this famously haunted house, Hill House, and record what happens there. And he knows that he needs assistance, so he does heaps of research into people that have experienced paranormal things, and then invites them to come and work as his assistants. And one of them is, I can't even remember their names. Eleanor.
Yeah.
So she is having has an overbearing sister, and her mum's died, and she isn't happy, and she doesn't even really think about it or question why. But he's like, come live here. I don't even know if they get paid, but he's like, live here, help me. I can, give you board and lodge.
So it's a main cast of 4. There's Dr. Montague, who has gathered all these other people, and he's the academic. He's the one whose study it is or whatever. There's Eleanor, who's kind of the main character. Theodora, who is another kind of, she has psychic powers of some
she
kind.
could guess like heaps of, like if they held up a card, she got most of them right, kind of thing. So she's the other assistant.
Yeah, and then Luke, who will inherit Hill House. Like, he's part of the family that owns Hill House.
And he has to kind of keep an eye on them and make sure they don't trash the place.
Yeah.
And then there's the housekeeper who kind of just repeats herself and like it says, I'll leave my food out, but you have to finish by this time, and then I'm leaving. And like has these strict rules, and she just sort of never varies from those phrases.
She also doesn't spend any more time at the house than she has to, and she leaves in the evenings, and she doesn't come back until 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, and you kind of never know why. Like, is it because it's haunted at night and she doesn't want to be there? And they get put in their rooms, and all of the rooms are just one colour. So one of them's in the green room.
That's trendy at the moment, On TikTok, everyone's colour drenching. That's what it's called.
Really?
And painting the walls and the ceiling the same colour so that it emanates down. It's.
But that's just too much.
Yeah.
And the
colour drenching. So Haunting Hill House ahead of its time,
But so what, the duvets and everything?
Or
would
maybe
be the
it
same
was
cover?
a fashion before and now it's coming back. I don't know. Yeah, kind of. Like,
I hate it. When I went to Scotland, one of my relatives had they say a castle. It was a very big house. There were no turrets. Come on. But we went along. Funny story.
Was there
actually.
a moat?
No,
or a drawbridge.
That's what I mean. Not
or
a castle.
any crenellated edges, because that would make it a castle.
No, it was just a really big house, and it was a very big house. Anyway, because my grandma was McMinn, which is part of the Menzies, Menzies, and we went there. And I said, "Oh, is this castle Menzies?" And he said, "Mingers." And I went, "Oh, Menzies." And he goes, "No, it's pronounced Mingers." And Zach's like, "Oh my god, your family's a bunch of Mingers."
Yeah,
it was hilarious, but it was all pink. Like really, really pink, like you think of like baby girl pink, that kind of pink.
Like a womb. You step into the belly of the house.
When Robert Mingers,
castle, sorry.
Robert Mingers was there. A picture of him. He was a prime minister or something, wasn't he? In Australia, Menzies. Yeah, but it's
I'm
Mingers.
Not saying Mingers. I'm not.
Anyway,
saying...
but it was all pink, and it was just so I found it quite confronting. Like, I couldn't relate.
Strange.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah, so then nighttime happens, and sure enough, it's haunted, right?
There's kind of...
It's not a spoiler.
But there's kind of strange happenings in the house, and it progresses from, being a bit more ambiguous. Did that really happen? Or if it did, was it kind of a supernatural occurrence, or was it, the wind? Or there's a lot about the architecture of the house, how it kind of...
That was weird.
It reminded me a bit of... not that I've read it yet, but House of Leaves.
Yeah.
The whole premise of House of Leaves is that the house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Like, he takes measurements and it kind of... It just defies the laws of physics, basically, and then a doorway appears and blah, blah. I haven't read the rest of it, so I don't really know. But yeah, that similar thing of, the architecture, something just being off. And that's the reason in Hill House, the doors often swing closed, but then it's is there a presence that's doing that? Or is it because the house is built this way?
And they always felt disoriented, no matter how much they learnt where things were, they got lost. And there was sort of there were rooms
really
in the middle.
Interesting setup.
I thought,
but I didn't like her writing. I felt like I was just always at arm's distance, and I kind of would get to the end of a passage, and the way she had written it, for me anyway, I don't know if it's the headspace I was in or whatever, and I didn't have this problem with We Have Always Lived in the Castle, so I don't know.
Or her short stories, which I loved.
Yeah,
I loved her
everything
short
just
stories.
felt kind of obfuscated, so I'd get to the end of a passage and I'd be like, oh, a haunting, something just happened, and I'd have to go back and reread it to understand what
Yeah,
happened.
I agree with that. It was sort of a bit vague. And I think the whole premise of it, and this isn't a spoiler, but Eleanor, you kind of wonder how well she is. And, you know, she's obviously got some trauma that she's hasn't dealt with. And but then, of course...
Well, her kind of supernatural credentials for being there are that when she was a child, she probably was the one to cause, like, a hailstorm of rocks to fall down on her house. So,
but then she thought that it was, like, her mum told her it was neighbours throwing rocks.
Yeah, she wasn't aware she was doing it. But that is kind of I don't know whether it existed pre this book or this is kind of the inception of it, but that's kind of a trope now anyway, is, like, summoning things like that and not knowing that you're doing it. Yeah. Well, so I think there's maybe an argument to be made that, like, a lot of tropes that I'm really familiar with now,
especially in movies,
that I'm reading that, like, don't feel very fresh to me, they actually came from this, and that's why this doesn't feel...
Well, like The Road.
This didn't feel very remarkable to me. Yeah,
The Road was one of the first dystopian blah, blah, blah. But now you're like, well, there's heaps of books, there's heaps of video games and movies like that. So when was this published? 1959. So it really... I mean, that's quite... Yeah, and I don't know much about, like...
Also, I thought the characters were... Like, obviously the characters were meant to be strange.
And insipid,
but the character work itself, like, I was just confused by a lot of their interactions. I didn't understand why they were relating to each other the way they were, especially Eleanor and Theodora. Like, at first I couldn't tell if they were kind of, like, flirting, and then they just suddenly seemed to hate each other, and I was like, oh, so they were really teasing each other in a nasty way. Like, I thought it was kind of playful
or sisterly, like.
So like I felt lost a lot of the time, and not in like a oh good, that's what she intended way, just like in a I'm not keeping up. Like,
see, I thought it was intentional in that the house was playing them against each other. And I mean, look, I don't know about you, but there are times that we're like, what is that? Is that something scary? And then you're with your friends and it's nighttime and you hear something and then you build each other up and there kind of gets this feeling of, in the air, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's that. And especially this weird house that you're always lost in. And like there was a patch of it that was always cold. No matter where you were always cold. And I don't know.
That's another trope. That's another trope.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Oh, I see. I didn't know any of that.
Ghosts and presences and things being cold and, like, standing in a particular spot and feeling freezing, or that's...
okay. But again, it's the architecture. And I think the architecture thing was quite fascinating. Like, that was a character in itself, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the house was.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it definitely ended, and I was just like, so it was haunted? I don't think it's a spoiler. Like, it's one of those things that leaves you kind of wondering, I think.
Well, and I think that's the point, but then if the point of the book is not the destination and knowing exactly whether or not the house is haunted and how and why, then the journey should be more enjoyable. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really didn't derive any enjoyment I was, like, annoyed. Every time I picked up this book, I was like...
I agree that... Oh, sorry. No, you finish.
No.
Sorry.
I will just say, I think one other thing that worked against it for me is, like, that I had kind of been saving it because I thought I was guaranteed to like it. Like,
me too.
Not intentionally, but I was like, 1 October, I'll read The Haunting of Hill House because it's a horror classic. Yeah. I love horror. I haven't read it yet. I've loved her other writing.
Yeah.
It's a guaranteed, like...
And it's her most popular, I think, which surprised me.
This is kind of her masterpiece, like... above We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Anyway, you go.
Well, and I agree, and I think high expectations definitely usually ruin... Like, they make a book not as good as it could be most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. Haunting of
Rosie Ravelston.
Of Rosie Ravelston. I think I don't know, I didn't necessarily enjoy it, but I think that was the point too. Like, it was supposed to be a bit of a head fuck, and you kind of didn't know what was going on. And she didn't know what was going on, and... So as the reader, we were also... Because it was confusing, and there were bits I had to go back and read, and then there were other bits I was just like, I don't really get it, but I'll just keep reading. And there was definitely a lot of flicking back and forth.
Yeah, but see, Cath and I were talking about this the other day. I feel like this is kind of that conversation we were having the other day about... we were looking back on our year, because we're going to do maybe a podcast talking about our top 5 books of the year or whatever, and coming up with a top 10 when we've both read, like, about 40 or 50 books was really hard.
It was hard.
And I think that's because we kind of, like... push through and read books as, like, an intellectual exercise, or because we should, or
as a
whatever.
Bookseller, you want to have read.
Totally. Yeah. And I think there is value in that, like, sometimes. But yeah, I just think I'm not reading enough books where I'm like, oh my god, I love this.
Yeah.
And then kind of
true. There weren't
not
heaps of
making
those for me this
excuses
year.
for it afterwards, but, like, rationalizing why it was worthwhile to read.
Yeah.
And all those reasons are not just, oh, I enjoyed it. And I need to be reading more books that I just enjoy.
Yeah, who
and
cares?
It's such a shame that I didn't, because I was really expecting to.
Especially because I loved her other, her short stories. I haven't read The Lottery.
I would like to read The Lottery. I'll still read
we
other
should
things.
order it, because I don't think we're going to see it.
Yeah.
Faith and Steve have been looking for it for years. They've never seen it.
Get it in. Like, it hasn't tarnished her for me. And I think this is an example of one that was maybe really groundbreaking for its time, but other books have since done it better.
I wonder if it was the first that did this. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there might have been a number of tropes there that, like, even if they kind of existed in folklore before, this was the first time they were kind of published and disseminated widely, or like brought all together and made into kind of a haunted house narrative. Like, it might well have been the first time that was done in fiction. I don't really know. I think it was quite influential.
Well, for 1959, and I mean as a female writer as well, I mean, I imagine it wasn't typical for women to write about such things.
But yeah, it is really beloved and kind of...
Well, Stephen King
Stephen King blurbs everything.
No, but he says it's one of the finest novels.
As nearly perfect a haunted house tale as I have ever read. Stepping into Hill House is like stepping into the mind of a madman. Well, I can agree with that. Yeah.
And I do think a lot of the point was figuring out what was going on in people's heads, and was that haunting, was that their own shit, was that just being in a haunted place together, like a supposedly haunted place together. Even if it wasn't haunted, you would go a bit mad being in there just because of everything you'd heard. And it's I don't know. And I left going, I think I hate all of these characters as well. I think that's part of it too. But I
also think maybe there's something to be said for, like, I had seen the opening kind of lines a lot before I read the book, because it's kind of touted as like one of the best opening lines ever in a book. And I always found it kind of wordy, and what's the word I'm looking for? But kind of, it's not ungrammatical, but it's kind of, the grammar isn't how you would expect. Like, it's kind of deliberately, but maybe it is deliberate because it's supposed to
Eleanor's
kind of
point of view.
Well, not even, it's before Eleanor's point of view, but because it's kind of trying to emulate that same the house, how the house is, the architecture shouldn't exist in that same way. Like, maybe it's supposed to be just set you slightly off kilter. Like, you read a sentence,
that's exactly right.
And you read a sentence and the clauses aren't set out
feel
exactly.
Uneasy. Yeah,
the clauses
I agree,
aren't set out
actually.
exactly how you would expect. But maybe that's on purpose, which is really clever, but doesn't make for an enjoyable reading experience. You know, it's kind of that balance.
But did you feel unsettled reading it? Because I did, and as I said,
I think I just felt frustrated.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, especially coming and reading a lot of horror, as I said, there were parts where I don't know if I was scared, but I was definitely nervous, and I had to go, oh, and not rush ahead, and then I'd read ahead, and then I go, no, Cath, come on, read it properly, and are they going to be okay?
See, whereas
you don't know what's going to happen.
Whereas when, I don't want to spoil the kind of specific things that happen, but when we finally got to a scene where something would really happen, as opposed to the characters just having this feeling, I was kind of like, oh, finally, so then I didn't really...
I admit there was a bit of that, but I think the point was, as I said, was it haunted? Wasn't it haunted? What was, So I agree with you and all of that, but I do think, I think, as I said, I did feel nervous, and I think that added to it, but it wasn't, if I was going to recommend a Shirley Jackson, it wouldn't be this one.
No.
But I'm glad I read it. I think it was a good weird book, but I'm still kind of unsure how I feel about it, because it's still,
Well, again, both of these are kind of books I read. It's hard because I did derive some enjoyment from Flowers in the Attic, more than Haunting of Hill House. But for me, the main reason to read both of them was because I felt like I should. Because I felt like if I'm a horror fan, then these are part of the canon, right? Like, it's kind of classics within that genre. Which is maybe a good segue to our next one, which is a classic in the genre, but also just a classic, full stop. Do you want to...
Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. And this one, I had an edition at home, and because there are two editions, which I didn't realise. Again, this is Alex's knowledge.
But two main editions.
Yeah. But this one is the Penguin edition with an introduction by Charlotte Gordon. And I don't usually read introductions because I'm like, well, I don't know the book. I haven't read it yet. I'm not that interested. And sometimes they presume you've read it and then they give you spoilers. It was so... Did you read the introduction yet?
Yeah.
Did you love it? I mean, you probably knew a lot of this stuff.
I think I knew more. Yeah, but it was very well written, and I really liked it.
It was fascinating. And so she is Mary Shelley is Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter, who is a really famous sociologist, philosopher, feminist.
Kind of, proto-feminist.
Like, super ahead of it, ahead of her time, as a woman, and as a writer, as a philosopher. And, she's not brought up a lot. I want to talk about that other book we read. But anyway, I only got so much time. But yeah, she gave birth. Gave birth? Is it gave birth? How do you say it?
Yeah.
My brain went for a second. It just sounds weird. Gave birth.
Yeah.
Anyway, she gave birth to Mary Shelley, and then Mary Wollstonecraft died 10 days later. So Mary Shelley really never got to know her mum. But, she read all her work and sort of, it obviously was very influential.
Yeah.
And then you told me that Mary Shelley lost her virginity on her mum's grave.
To Percy Shelley, I believe.
Then when you said the original goth, which made me laugh. And I had
also she was like 19 when she was writing Frankenstein. Like, that's just incredible.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
Hanging out with Percy Shelley and Lord Byron. And we've had their poetry in the shop before, and I never really, I don't know, I dismissed it as, old white man poetry. But now I'm like, okay, if they were hanging out with her, maybe that's a bit more interesting. And the introduction talks about they were all, I think, in Spain or something, and Byron...
Switzerland.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to say it? I always get all the things wrong. Yeah. And then Lord Byron basically said, ghost stories aren't scary. Let's write something really scary. Let's have sort of a competition of some sorts. And a couple of them finished. Lord Byron wrote something that another one of them went on to, it was sort of became a version of sort of a vampire story at least. And Mary Shelley came up with Frankenstein. She published it anonymously. And then it got famous because it was made into a play.
Yeah.
And then she went back, so this was 1818. Then she went back and edited it and made it more dystopian in 1936, was it?
No, 1931, I think.
And then put her name on it and was like, "Ha! I'm a woman. Woman can write too." And it was very it was quite controversial.
1831. Yeah,
1831. Yeah, it was very controversial because of its theme, not just because it was by a woman, because of its themes. The super religious time where you shouldn't play with that kind of stuff, and it's this man creating a monster and I didn't know much about it.
The alternate title is The Modern Prometheus, so that kind of gives you an indication of...
Which one's Prometheus? Flying too close to the sun with the wax on his wings?
That's Icarus. No, Prometheus is the one that took fire from the gods and gave it to man. So literally putting the power that had previously only been held by gods. I might be getting that wrong. I'm not as knowledgeable on mythology as I am on...
Well, that's all right.
Anyway, but on other things. But, so it's that idea of kind of knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge,
and then the
is
repercussions.
Dangerous. Yeah.
And I didn't know much about it. I know the tropes of the guy with the bolts in his neck, and I know that everyone calls the monster Frankenstein, but it's actually the creator who's Frankenstein. And he's sort of and he's green, and he has for some reason a bowl cut. I don't know, but I didn't really know much, and I knew there were things like Bride of Frankenstein and things. So but that's sort of all I knew, and I deliberately didn't read much like a blurb or anything into it because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same.
I really, really liked it. And I thought 1818, so many classics are boring, and that's a whole other conversation we keep having, which we should talk about because we should. But anyway, it was
another
brilliant.
time, maybe,
it was in 3 parts, I don't want to say too much. A lot of people have read it, and I've been talking to people in the shop about it, and a lot of them read it for school, which I'm glad I wasn't forced to, because I don't think I would have enjoyed it nearly as much.
I don't think I would have been able to appreciate it.
No,
Yeah.
And I think part of enjoying it too, and I was been reading this other book too, maybe we can talk about it in the next one, but about women philosophers, and they talk about Wollstonecraft, and so I feel like it wasn't a deliberate thing to read these books side by side, but it was kind of really interesting, and just to see how progressive Mary Shelley was.
Oh my God, it's shocking.
It's insane
it's really
how
awesome.
ahead of her time she was.
But I think I often say this when people kind of say they're of a different time, they're of a different generation.
Yeah, and they make it as an excuse, don't they?
It's an excuse because in every single time and in every single generation, there have been people that, in a contextually appropriate way, they're not going to be speaking in, modern day language or whatever to articulate these thoughts, but who care about other people, who care about rights, who have compassion and a sense of kind of justice and social justice.
And one of equality, or equity at least.
Yeah, like, you know, in the 60s, like, okay, well, segregation was still around, but there were absolutely white people joining in with civil rights marches. Like, and then you could go further back, way further back. Yeah. And I think it's so evident here because the things that Mary Shelley kind of has her characters say.
Yeah, like about colonization.
And without using those words, you know, but still, like, there's... I don't think it's a spoiler. I won't say, like, who's having this conversation, but there's a conversation between some characters where they're kind of talking about the new world, right? So America. And they're talking about the tragedy of the Mayans and the Aztecs being decimated. Like, that's just... she's incredible.
Like, I don't think many people would have thought that way. They would have seen it as a victory of the...
Well, they would have seen these people as savages.
Exactly, and they've educated them, and they've saved them, and they've rescued them.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, the three parts, and I don't know if it's a spoiler to sort of say what point of view it is. Do you think
I don't think you need to... Yeah,
maybe
it
I won't say,
but
yeah.
So, you know, the first part, without spoiling anything, the first part is very much about Frankenstein, like Victor Frankenstein, and kind of how he comes to be a man of learning and what he values in life and his ambition to create life. The second part is dealing with kind of the consequences of creating life, and then the third part is kind of the confrontation or the climax. Like, I think you could talk about
that's like a good way
without spoiling anything. And the first part, I will admit, like,
it
took me a bit longer to get through. Like, it was slow. It was interesting, and you could definitely see, like, Mary Shelley's kind of thoughts and how radical she was kind of peeking through. And, you know, there was a lot there about how important learning is and education and
travel and
and it was, you know, written in a time like where not everyone had those opportunities, and so you could really tell how much she valued them by how much she kind of made her characters value them. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, you're talking about the different parts.
Different parts. So the first part, I will admit, was like a bit...
It was slower.
It was slower to get through. It
was still interesting, but there were parts I was like, okay.
It was interesting, but it wasn't thrilling or gripping.
Agreed.
2 and 3, definitely those two things, thrilling and gripping, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it was really interesting to kind of read it knowing it's a classic and how old it is too. You know, and that it's... I don't know, it was like Dracula. Like, I thought that was going to be quite boring, but Dracula was awesome. I loved Dracula.
And this is where we should leave off, because we actually have to open up the shop, and we haven't maybe allotted our time very well, which is my fault because I was slow starting this morning. But
no, it's okay, keep going.
But Cath has this thing where she's like, I don't like classics. Classics are boring. And we've read Dracula and we've read Frankenstein, and both really enjoyed them. We read them together, like as a buddy read, and we both really enjoyed them. And I'm like, I think what you don't like is kind of things that feel historical fiction, things that are romance, things that are kind of domestic dramas. I think you don't like domestic dramas, Regency era romance. I don't think, like, because classic is not a but classic is not a genre. It's a status. Like, it's something that we assign to a book afterwards. So there are all sorts of classics that belong to different genres, and I feel like we've found a couple that you really like. So obviously, it's not a problem.
And Alex and I got in... would you call it an argument the other night?
Yeah.
About Frankenstein.
We got into a spirited discussion about Frankenstein.
And because we have very different points of view of who was right and who was wrong and what you could have done.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to do that without spoiling. So maybe we do end that now. But highly recommend Frankenstein.
Yeah. Well, maybe if enough people kind of give us feedback that they have read it and would like to hear, we could do a little side episode to this episode that is our discussion of Frankenstein.
Tell us if you've read it and you're interested to hear, because
I don't think we've had such a
I raised my voice. I was like, I can't believe you feel that way, that is just incorrect. And you're like, we need to accept this and move on. And Alex is like, I don't think I can move on. I can't believe you feel this. It was very spirited.
It was very dramatic.
I tell you what though, I would go back and read the 1831 text. That's how much I loved it.
Me too.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I should open the shop. We open in 3 minutes.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks, Friends of Rosey. And
I hope you've had a better reading year than we have. But we'll have an episode talking about that soon, probably.
Yeah, the ones we've read, our favourites of 2025.
Yeah.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.